Okay. A question that has been on my heart is, if we show up messy, depleted, with nothing to give, if we have no ability to perform, to tend to people, if we can't pour into a group because our well is empty, will we still be welcomed? This is a question that came up during a recent retreat that I hosted here in the Pacific Northwest. I had several participants who came and spent some time on a beautiful, lush farm. We did embodied healing work, and it was facilitated by my horses. And this question arose quite a bit. If I don't have anything to give to the group, am I still allowed? Do I still belong? And it hit me deep. I almost didn't make this video today because I don't feel ready. I don't feel polished. I'm tired. I'm tired from holding space for the retreat. Not that I regret it. It was an amazing experience. I loved it. But it takes energy. And I've had some back-to-back family and friend commitments that have just burned the candle at both ends. And I thought, maybe I'll just give it a skip this week. I won't make a video, even though I've made a commitment to myself to make a video every week. And I didn't let myself off the hook because this question came back to mind. Can we show up imperfectly? Can we show up when we are messy and still be welcomed? And I will be super honest. This one triggers me. It's a tough one. I, like many people, have been conditioned to believe that I'm only welcomed when I have something to give, that I'm only welcomed when I'm polished and whole, that I am only welcomed when everything is perfect and put together. And intellectually, I know this isn't true, but somatically, I struggle with it. And for good reason. In my life, I have had implicit and explicit messaging that I'm not allowed to take up space if I'm messy. And I don't mean messy as in I don't tidy up my room messy. I mean, if I'm not all together, if I don't have my answer pre-formatted and the words all laid out, if I don't have my hair perfect, if I don't have my outfit tidy and perfect, if I don't have my emotions all in check, then I need to take myself away and put that together and come back when everything is tidy and neat. The most recent example of this was during COVID about 5 years ago. I literally lost everything overnight. I had spent about 15 years cultivating a bodywork practice, and it took a lot of time for that business to be a viable business. It took a lot of time for it to sustain me financially, for me to have the reputation that I did, for me to start getting referrals to where it was self-sustaining, to develop a wonderful client base, and also to develop my skill and my expertise to be able to support that client base. I worked on that for a decade and a half, and I built it from scratch, and it was not always easy. And overnight, it was gone. Literally, I walked away from work. I think it was a Thursday or a Wednesday. Might have been a Wednesday. And I didn't come back. I never went back to my practice. And that was extremely scary because my income dried up overnight and I had commitments. I had responsibilities. I had a home that I had to pay a mortgage on, a condo. I had my horses that I needed to pay for their board and their care and their feed. And I have the bills that we all have. Utilities, health insurance, groceries, all the things. And I know that a lot of people were in the same boat. It was a really scary time. Everything dried up for me, and I had nothing. I didn't have a supportive partner to back me up. I was on my own for finances. There was no massive savings account in the wings where I had plenty and didn't have to be concerned about the future. And I confided in some friends. I called them and I told them how scared I was. And these were friends who I thought would be there for me. I'd been there for them in the past, and I thought that they would hold space for the absolute terror that I was experiencing, because I had no idea. None of us knew what was going to happen, what that was going to unfold as. And unfortunately, I was not always met with care and compassion. I was met with comparison. I was met with downplaying my fear and emotions. I was met with people who wanted to tell me that they'd had worse experiences in the past and to minimize the fear that I was having. And it was really painful. I fortunately was resourced in my nervous system and in myself. I was doubling down on my somatic work at the time because that's the resource I had. And so I dove into it as best I could and as much as I could. And I was able to discern that those were not supportive people and supportive relationships. And I carefully detached from them. Not through words of anger, it just pulled away. And that was really hard too, because it felt like on top of losing a business, I ended up selling and moving away from my home. I had to move my horses to another state where I could keep them for very, very cheap, but I couldn't visit them because they were hours and hours away. I lost my barn community as a result. My barn community was a big stability factor in my life of just having that group of people. I was very happy at the barn where I was keeping my horses. And all of that just fell apart. And on top of that, I also lost what seemed like my primary social support. I had thought it was my primary social support. And I was utterly bereft. And I will not lie. It was so painful. This is really painful when people don't meet you in your depletion and your need. I did learn that by turning to other friends, people that I didn't really realize would be there for me, I didn't realize that they were sort of waiting in the wings for me, that I started to cultivate a more supportive network. I found that there were actually people around me that I hadn't realized were able to hold space for me, were able to care for me. And I'm eternally grateful for those people, some of whom are still very much in my life as friends and part of my greater social support network. There's a lot of conditioning, whether it's implicit or explicit, around how we have to show up. And I know that when I show up with a blazer on and my hair perfectly polished, that automatically triggers more respect in people's minds. I am aware of that. But I also want to be real with you. I'm not always that polished and perfect. None of us are always so polished and put together. And it's also okay to show up when we're in those states. Me wearing a Henley and a puffy vest doesn't make me any less knowledgeable, any less capable of doing the work that I do. Me standing in a forest instead of a tidy office does not mean anything about me as an individual and as a human. But I am afraid, I will be really honest, I am afraid that if I put videos out where I am more untidy, unpolished, whatever you want to call it, that there will be criticism, that there will be judgment, that people won't take me seriously, that they won't see me for the knowledge and the capability that I have. The need to show up polished and perfect all the time is often rooted in a trauma response, because we've been so conditioned that if we don't show up just so, if we're not perfectly tidy and perfectly put together, that we won't be accepted, we won't be loved, we'll be rejected or abandoned. And the human brain is hardwired to preserve connection to other humans. Abandonment is the same as death to our brains, because if you look at it from a biology standpoint, a very young child cannot support itself on its own. You can't fend for yourself. You can't provide food for yourself. You need a bigger, stronger protector, and hopefully a group of bigger, stronger protectors. So you need to be loved, welcomed, and accepted into a group in order to survive in the wild that humans lived in before we lived in modern society. And your brain doesn't know you're living in a house, and it doesn't know there's a grocery store just down the street. It's still living in prehistoric times. It still thinks the saber-toothed tiger is going to get it. So we are hardwired to preserve connection. Actually, safety is in our connection, and we need people to accept us into the group. So if showing up imperfect and unpolished and a little bit messy might trigger some people to not accept you quite as much, or to have opinions about you that are somewhat negative, you're going to work really hard not to do that. And certain groups of people in particular have been very deeply conditioned to show up in certain ways. There's an expectation. This is exponentially true if you come with intersectional marginalized identities. But even having just one marginalized identity will mean that you likely have some type of conditioning about what is okay, how you're supposed to show up. So then when you don't show up that way, it triggers this sense of, I'm getting it wrong, I'm going to be abandoned, they won't love me, I'm going to be criticized, I'm going to be all alone, and then what will I do? And you may or may not have those conscious thoughts, but on a neurological level, on the nervous system level, your sympathetic nervous system mounts a fight or flight response in the face of rejection and criticism. Having to show up polished and perfect all the time is exhausting, especially when the expectations are very high, or the expectations are constantly changing, or the expectations are conflicting, which is often true. I can really only speak to my own experience, but just as a female, raised as female, who identifies as female, I can say that the expectations in how a woman is supposed to show up, there are so many different mixed messages there. There's just so many social expectations about what is right or good as for how you're supposed to show up. And that's just my experience with just one marginalized identity. So intersecting marginalized identities will stack this, because there will be expectations on top of expectations on top of expectations. I'm not here to tell you to just show up unpolished with abandon all the time. That's not what I'm saying. I am here to make space for the messiness of being human. I am here to tell you that your real friends, the people who truly support you, the people that deserve to be in your life, will not demand perfection. They will hold space for you when things are messy. They will welcome you in, they will hand you a warm cup of tea, and they will laugh with you. And they will help you to feel better when the future is absolutely bleak and blank. Those are the people where you will find true belonging. You won't find it when belonging has any element of performance in it. This is obviously a simple concept, but not an easy concept, because the world is complex. It's nuanced. We move through lots of different social circles with varying degrees of expectation. But there is a true core support network for you where you do belong. And I hope you find it. If this video has been helpful for you, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. It really does mean the world to me. And I will see you in the next one.